could you explain regionalization? It's not entirely unlike how we relate now, but uh, our organization. But could you explain regionalization as was passed at General Conference and will be going for ratification, and what, if any, impact it may have on United Women in Faith?
Sure. I'm sharing a definition that I captured from our General Conference legislative recap from our General Conference website. And it says that regionalization represents an effort to put the church's different geographical regions on equal footing and to make the General Conference less U.S. centric. And that the current central conferences and the U.S. would become regional conferences with the same authority to pass legislation for greater missional impact. So that in a kind of a recap would mean that the United States would be able to form as a regional conference and have the authority to make decisions based on our context and situations that we face that may be unlike situations that our sisters and brothers globally might face. And like the central conferences have had some flexibility to do that already, this also gives the United States, like our central conferences, that flexibility as well. And when we come together at General Conference, we are really focusing on global context matters and not things that are just applicable, which happens many in every General Conference I've ever been to, that are just U.S. centric. And so looking forward to it. I do want to say that this conversation around regionalization, or this was kind of, I guess, the final name that came forward, but there have been many other plans that were presented previously, talked about. So this conversation didn't just happen overnight. It's been in development for many years. And with the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters and our connectional table collaborating on the various petitions that were submitted to bring forth the legislation that was approved at this General Conference. And it was shared in consultations globally throughout the various central conferences. And it received support from delegations or from delegates from every region. So excited about that. I will say that there is a next step to regionalization. As you heard Sung Ok describe about the ratification, that it's not set in stone just yet. We celebrate that, that it's passed, which our board did support it, but we've got to get the votes at every annual conference so that there is the 2/3 majority aggregated, as Sung Ok described, to ensure that this will go into effect. And then we can begin the work of how we will organize and refit and refresh and remodel ourselves as a regional conference. I also want to lift up that we alluded to it earlier about the one other constitutional legislation that will also need ratification, and that was related to paragraph 4, which includes gender and ability as those points of consideration for membership, that people can't be excluded because of gender and ability. So that too will be part of a constitutional change that will require a 2/3 majority vote at annual conferences. So how does this impact United Women in Faith? Well, first, I said already that our board, supported regionalization as a just and equitable way to move forward. As Molly alluded to, we really have been modeling this kind of relationship with our global sisters for years. We consider them as part of our sisterhood, and they consider us as part of their sisterhood. However, we don't expect that they organize the same way that we do here in the United States. They operate, as I said, autonomously for their own context. And this is what regionalization will model. Each regional conference will make decisions based on their context as much as the Book of Discipline allows. So I think, once again, we've been ahead of the church. We're known for kind of being out and being the front runners. Well, we've been living this regional model for many years now. So what impact, I asked the question, Molly, what impact can United Women in Faith have on regionalization? Well, I really want to encourage us to participate in ensuring of the ratification that it is successful in our annual conferences. Be part of conversations happening at all levels, your local church, your districts, your conferences, to ensure that you're wearing your United Women in Faith lens to make sure that women's voices are heard and that we are participating in the future of our church and what we want our church to be and how we want our church to live out um, God's call to transform lives and make disciples for Jesus Christ. We have to seek to represent, to be part of the voting body for the ratification. If you're not a member representing your local church, ask to be that member that represents, that will have voting power at your annual conference when you're voting on this legislation. Also, you can consider asking to be a district at large member for the lay clergy equalization. I am one of the at large delegates to my annual conference every year. And it's simply by asking, because they're always looking for lay people and clergy persons to have that balance of lay and clergy. And I encourage you to stay tuned because we'll be offering guidance as we begin talking about ratification, when it will arrive and when we'll be voting on it. Some people may, some conferences may have voting on it starting this year. I was reading in the recap that it will go out 30 days after General Conference concludes. So we haven't reached that 30 days, but some conferences, you know, it really is up to them. We expect that most of them will be doing it at next year's annual conference, but not necessarily. Some of the Central Conference churches, Central conferences will be meeting, you know, by the end of the year for their annual conferences. They're on different cycles, some of them. So we can begin to see the numbers starting to be aggregated, you know, as early as probably sometime in the fall or leading into next year. But I don't anticipate that it would be completed until the annual conference cycle next year. But stay tuned and keep in touch with us and the information that we have to share with you in an ongoing way.